I'm gonna call this from the streets to the pulpit.
Hello. Thank you for taking the time out for doing this documentary for me.
Okay.
Thank
Cool.
you for taking the time to doing this because I know you're tired.
Yeah, and I just got off of work and you cut into my study time, but I'm gonna give you the opportunity and we're gonna take this as a blessing. It might bless somebody down the road.
All right. First, tell the camera who you are, where you're from, what's your background.
Minister Samuel Kirkland Epps the third, but they call me Samuel Pop Epps because Pop is my name that I was raised up with because they said when I was a little boy, when I was born, I looked like my grandfather, old man with the fat cheeks. So the Pop stuck with me and I've been Pop everywhere, everywhere since. So whenever I have my name on a marquee, I put Samuel Pop Epps. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, Kings County Hospital. My father's name is Samuel K. Epps Jr. and my mother Marie Elizabeth Epps. They had me when my mother was 17 years old. I was raised. I stayed in Fort Greene Projects first, and then we moved from Fort Greene Projects. Then we moved over there to Wilson Avenue after my pops broke up, and we stayed in a 3-story building. We had the top floor. My grandmother had the middle and the bottom. I had 4 uncles, and a daughter, and that's how we was raised up there.
All right. You say you were raised up in Fort Greene, up in Brooklyn. How was life in Brooklyn?
Well, my pops, he was in Rikers Island, so, I didn't get a lot of time to see with him. A lot of time with him. He was in Rikers Island. And my mother raised me mostly, and my uncles. I had uncles. I had like 4 or 5 uncles, and they raised us when Mama went out to work. They came in and they took over, but what Mama didn't know, they wouldn't just babysitting me. They would be in there getting high, drinking, snorting cocaine, selling marijuana. They used to have parties in the basement, and they used to stand when you come in, you pay your $5, and they give you a joint. I was surrounded by drugs all my life. I had another uncle that lived in Sheepheads Bay. I used to spend a lot of time over there with him too. And in his apartment, he had 3-bedroom apartment. And 2 of the bedrooms, he had aluminum foil all on the walls, all on the wall. He had lights. He had artificial marijuana growing farm in there. And I used to help him bag it up. I used to help him scale it. Help him scale it, bag it up, and put it. We used to keep it in the freezer. And he used to have a record shop that he sold drugs out of. Somebody coming there, I give him a nickel, a dime, or whatever. And I just been around drugs all my life. But what I didn't know was the reason why, my mom and my father broke up. I didn't know it was because of drugs, because my mother kept it from me. I appreciate her. I didn't find out later that my father was a heroin addict. And I used to ask Mama all the time, because we'd be in the living room and Dad be in there asleep. See what they have? They call it the heroin nod. This is part of the high. My daddy used to be like this with a cigarette in his hand. He'd go all the way down like this. Then he'd wake up, do that thing, Ray Charles. Yeah, like I was saying. But anyway, I grew up, around drugs, and I grew up around men glorifying the domination of the opposite sex, because I was slow. I didn't really care for girls when I was that young, they were just aggravating. But my uncles and them said, you a faggot, you a punk, you ain't gonna, what you call it. So what I had to do, I had to represent manhood to me. I couldn't wait till I could be able to drink. That represented manhood. I couldn't wait to have sex so that I could show them that I was a man. So I started having sex probably around 11 years old. With girls on the block. They think we be playing. I used to have them hemmed up somewhere because that's what I taught. That's what I represented. That's what represented manhood to me. And drugs was part of being a man. And little did I know I would dive deep into that drug thing. Scared, because I'm afraid of failing. But I started studying. I started reading. And I just listened and I humbled myself to him. And God is a forgiving God. The Bible says He's a forgiving God. He's slow to anger, and he forgave me for everything that I've ever done. When I got saved and baptized, he threw it in the sea of forgetfulness, and he uses the people that you least expect. Now, when I decided to come to ministry, people that grew up with me, people would tell me, Pop preaching now. Who? Pop. Who? Samuel Epps. Samuel doing what? I mean, because I'll say that to myself. When I look at my certificate, my license, I say, who? Pop? I still like God. I'll be like, God, you must have been really shooting bad to have to use me. But I realized that all the drug addiction, all the stuff I suffered and I caused my family to suffer was because he had to allow me, he didn't take me there, but he allowed me to go all the way to the bottom. I lived in homeless shelters. I stayed in the junkyards, in the parks, sometime in the hallways of buildings after me and my wife broke up. I mean, I was homeless for a while. I remember one of the worst moments was when I was hungry and I didn't have no money and no access to one because I moved out of town, and I had to go in the grocery store and steal my food. I had to steal sardines. I got things like sardines. What's them little things? Vienna sausages. But I've always, even through my bad times, I find something funny out of it. But I'm gonna tell you, one time I was homeless and I had the hemorrhoids. And I mean, I was walking like John Wayne when he was 70 years old or whatever, or old man. I mean, I was walking, I couldn't sit, so I had to go in the grocery store and steal me some Preparation H. And I said to myself, I said, Lord, could you hear the comedians saying, could you hear the comedians saying, that's the dog, could you hear the comedians saying, this man must have been hurting real bad. There was a man in Columbia, South Carolina, who was arrested for stealing. But let me tell you what he was stealing. I bet none of you can guess. This man was stealing Preparation H. His ass must have really been on fire. I just think about how they would joke, but I got it, used it, and I was good. But I mean, God brought me all the way to the bottom and made me feel worthless, that I was so low, I couldn't go no lower. So he humbled me all the way down. And so when I come out, when he brought me out of that dark place, when he took that addiction from me, when he healed me, I knew that no man had nothing to do with it, no rehab had anything to do with it. It was all God. But in rehab, I learned the tools, but it wasn't until I used God as my foundation that I was able to get off it. And now,
how deep were you into drugs?
Well, when I was in New York, I wasn't, I sneaked me a roach or something. Me and my cousin, we sneak us a roach, like we high and stuff like that. But we didn't get much. We used to go down in the basement, catch a contact when they have apartment. But my mother, I stayed in a lot of trouble in school, and my mother decided she met somebody, and my father was broke up. Then later on, during a breakup, my father died from kidney failure. So Mama got with my stepfather named Randy, and we moved down south. But I thought I moved down south was because I was showing out, being bad. But come to find out later that my sister, she was pregnant at the age of 12. So we left, and my mother, she was embarrassed about it, so she moved us down south. But anyway, I moved down south, met a girl named Charlotte. Met a couple of girls. I met a couple of girls. I was sowing my royal oats because that's what I represented manhood to. I was trying to get as many as I can get. And during high school, everywhere. And then I wound up at a senior in high school. I had 3 girls pregnant. And man, that was a very stressful thing. So after I got out of high school, me and Charlotte, I had a kid by Charlotte, had a kid by all 3 of them girls, but my son by Charlotte, we moved to New York with my sister-in-law Jackie, Charlotte's twin, and we moved with my uncle Daryl, the one that I said had weed factory all up in the house. But anyway, times have changed. he wasn't selling weed no more because he was on crack cocaine. And he stressed, he used to sit there and say, man, come on, try some of this, man. Man, I always wait till you get grown so you can, do this. This is what grown folks do, man. I said, no, I don't mess with no powder or nothing like that. He said, well, it's breaking down with baking soda. It's not really that effective. He said, I said, no, I kept turning him down. Then on my birthday, he said, hey, man, I love you. Don't you know I love you? I said, yeah, I know you love me, Daryl. I said, why? He said, man, it's you up here with your family. I done moved your wife, your wife's sister, your son here, and you think I'd do anything to hurt you, man? I'm glad you taking the place of my brother that died, which was my father. He said, and now it's like I'm having my brother all again, man. This thing ain't gonna hurt you. So I tried it. He put it in the pipe and I hit it, and I said, well, it ain't that bad, it ain't all that. Then that night I was liking it. He was passing it to me. Then after a while, he didn't have to pass me. It was an instant attraction 2 hours later. And I tell you, about 3 days later, we did it again and did it again. Next thing you know, every money I got, I was trying to get for this drug. And I was just, every time I get $5, I was going to get us some drugs. And me and him fell out. We got in an argument. Now we decided to move back down south. And by then, crack cocaine had to come down south, but nobody knew how to cook it. They only bought it in crack form, but I knew how to cook it from my uncle. So they used to call me Chef Boyardee because everybody would get cocaine and ask me to cook it. And, I came real good at doing it. Big things, I'm the Einstein of cooking crack, I guess what you say back then in the South. But I got so into cooking it, getting high, man, that I didn't realize that it was taking over my life every day. That's all I thought about. Well, not every day, but every other day I was thinking about getting high or making money. But it started becoming a part of my life. I stopped being a father. I stopped being a husband. Then it got to a point to where I started spending my checks. I would make some money and sell some crack. But then I wound up spending the money that I made off the crack. And then I wound up spending my check. I got to a point to where I was stealing out my own house, messing up my wife, and having no grocery. I mean, this thing had consumed me. It had me bound. I went to rehab, came back out, stayed clean for about 60 days, went to rehab again, stayed clean about 60 days, 70 days, went to rehab again. By this time, my wife, she just started getting tired of it. She just had an affair with seeing somebody on the side. So the drug game caused my whole world to just crumble down. Just crumble down. Just fall all apart. And then my wife just got tired and she moved to Chicago and took my kids and left. And I went on a downward spiral, man. I mean, I just started getting high just to get high. I just didn't want to live anymore. I used to ask God every day, don't let me wake up, because everything that I lived for, this drug took it from me. I allowed it to take it from me. And so she moved to Chicago and she started seeing somebody. I moved to Columbia, South Carolina, and I had got off it then. I had went to rehab and I hadn't messed with it no more. And I started hanging out with some friends of mine up there. Next thing you know, I was back on it again. But what had transpired when I got back on it, when I went to rehab again, and my wife had moved back down here from Chicago. And I said, Lord, please help me get my family back. I said, I just want to be there to help my kids, help my wife raise my kids. If you want to take me after that, do it. But I need to help her with this. So I stayed clean. I prayed. My wife was going to church all the time. I wasn't going to church because I didn't really care about all them hypocritical people. That's what I call them in church, the hypocrites. But my wife started changing. Her talk was different. Her walk was different. Her disposition was different. And she stayed in church 4 and 5 hours. And I said, ain't nobody stay in church that long. So I thought she might have been cutting out. But I went with her and she go one church to another church to this. And so, I started having a good time. And one day she kept begging me to come back. And I came back. And one day I came back, man, and I started crying. And I had an uncontrollable cry. And I had this feeling over me. I started getting chills. and I tightened up so I wouldn't cry real hard. Then I came back the next Sunday. It looked like something got a hold of me, man. I could not stop crying. I could not stop hollering. I mean, man, I like it was a presence there. And I knew that was the presence of the Holy Ghost, which I've been reading in Scripture. But it wasn't until then I used to have these dreams of the more I read Scripture, the more I used to visualize stuff, and I had these dreams about Jesus, about the Apostle Paul, Isaiah, all these stuff, and I used to leave and go to these places, and I sit there and say, I be walking down the road, and I can hear God just giving me scriptures in my head, and some dreams He used to be showing me different things and places how people are strung out in New York and places like this that's still out there on drugs, and that you can help them. He was just showing me people that's still out there, and I felt inside He was telling me that He wanted to use me to help these people. But I still was running from it, because you got to think, I come from the dirt. I did so much messing up. How am I going to be able to represent God? I didn't want to have no part of that, because I knew I would eventually fail somehow. If it wasn't for, I knew it wasn't going to be the drugs, but I thought it was going to be women. But I overcame that too. And I'm going to tell you when I really overcame it, when me and my wife got remarried, I promised that I would never mess up on her again. And I didn't. But what led me to preaching was, beside the visions, the dreams, my son Reggie. I have two sons, Stephen and Reggie. Reggie's my younger boy. Reggie had a motorcycle accident. And when he had the motorcycle accident, I was at work. And he don't even ride a motorcycle. Some fool let him do it. And I was at work, and I get a call, Pop, come to the hospital, Reggie. They had a bad motorcycle accident. I said, Reggie don't drive no motorcycle. But anyway, I went there. As soon as I went there, all the family was there. Charlotte, Reggie's mother, and family, everybody was there. And doctor come out and say, Mr. Epps, I just want to tell you this. Reggie is in critical condition. I don't believe in giving nobody false hope. He said, but Reggie's not going to make it through the night. He said we had to drill a hole in his head to relieve the pressure off his brain. He said his blood pressure is real low. His oxygen level is real low. He's bleeding internally. He done crushed his femur bone in his right leg and broke it a couple of places in his left leg. And Mr. Epps, all his numbers are dropping. Reggie's not going to make it through the night. And when he said that, Reggie, Mama Barbara, had hit the floor. My wife, Charlotte, took off running. And I didn't try to comfort neither one of them. And I said, I hear everything you saying, Doc. I said, but God didn't tell me this. I don't feel that Reggie gonna die. I said, don't give up on my son. I said, please don't give. He said, no, I'm not giving up on him. I'm just telling you, he's not gonna make it through the night. So don't get no false hopes. He said, I know y'all praying, family. Y'all just pray. So I still didn't help Barbara, and I still didn't comfort Charlotte. I went into the bathroom, and I said, Lord, this is me again. Pop. I said, I know I done called you plenty times when I was out there on the drugs, when my wife left you. I know you know my name, you know my voice, because I call on you so much. And I usually call on you when I done messed up and ask you to fix it. I said, but I haven't messed up. I've been a good guy. And I said, I need for you right now. I said, my son they say he's about to die. The doctors done gave up on him. They saying that he's not going to make it through the night. I said, I know you got a call on my life, but I'm scared because I don't want to fail you. You've got me out of a bunch of stuff, and I just don't want to fail you. But I said, these people are saying my son is going to die. But if you save my son's life, I know that they ain't have nothing to do with this. This was all about you. Nothing to do with it. I said, so God, I need you. I said, Lord, please help me. Please help me. I don't want to lose my child, man. I don't want to lose him. Can you just come now? Show me a sign that you want me to do your work by saving my son. And all of a sudden, it felt like I'm a pessimist. I never, the hypocrite people, the church folks, I was like that until I started coming and realized that it's a hospital for spiritually sick people. But then what happened, man, it's like I was enveloped in something. I couldn't see nothing, But I knew I was in the presence of God, because automatically everything stopped. Everything, I mean, I wasn't scared no more. I stopped sweating. My tears dried up. I was like, I was just in a peaceful state. And that's where I know where they said a peace beyond all understanding. My son was dying, and I was crying all of it. It's like a switch was just turned off, and I felt myself enveloped in this thing. And it wasn't saying, I couldn't hear no voice like they say you hear voices. I couldn't hear no voice, but I felt everything. I felt everything he was saying to me. I couldn't hear nothing, no voice, but I had the knowing. I just knew that my son wasn't going to die. He ain't said it. He must have spoke to my spirit, and my spirit spoke back to him, but I didn't hear no words, or he didn't show me no vision or nothing. It was this presence that just told me that my son was going to live. So 3 days later, they still hadn't fixed his legs, because why are you going to fix somebody's legs if you think they're going to die? And then the 4th day, they fixed his right leg. 2 days later, they fixed his left leg. They surgery on his left leg. Then his brain swelling has stopped. And then his blood pressure has started rising. His heart rate started rising. His oxygen level started rising. And the doctor comes back and he said, Mr. Epps, I know I told you that Reggie wasn't going to make it. And that, but his body healing mechanism started working on overdrive. His blood started clotting. His oxygen level went up. His heart rate went up. The swelling started going down in his brain, and they said his body is healing itself. And he said sometimes the body does strange things, but what I did all the whole time he was telling me this, I went to rocking. I went to rocking because I wanted to take off running, but I wanted to hear his thing. But I was running on the inside because I know what I felt in that bathroom was the presence of God. I know that was Jesus there, and I know that he touched me, and that's why now I'm a minister. And before I had mustard seed faith, but now my faith is bigger than a mustard seed, because now I know that 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 God is real.